Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. I got another Master Duel video for you. So I actually got really lucky here. Normally I don't get to talk about news like same day, but I work later this morning. I happened to jump on Master Duel to work on a different video before I go do my day job, and I actually caught a really important notification here. That is going to be the Forbidden Limited List update. We get to talk about this same day, which is great. I glanced at it. I literally just glanced at it, but I haven't like fully digested everything. That said, I'm definitely eager to dive on in and take a look at these changes here. I think this literally just went live because I don't even remember seeing this when I logged in just now. Okay, so starts on December 5th. That's probably going to be then the same day our next pack drops, if I had to guess. Yeah, I saw this. Look, they banned a card. They banned Pot of Prosperity. Let's go through and look at all the changes, and then I'll talk about how I feel about each one. Oof. So Pot of Prosperity going from 1 to 0. Cards to be limited. Dimension Shifter going from 2 to 1. Fairy Tale Snow going from 3 to 1. Psych-frame Gear Gamma going from 2 to 1. And those are all the limits. Cards to be semi-limited. Lightning Storm going from 3 to 2. And then finally, card switch limit on the number of copies will be lifted. That's Trickstar Light Stage and Chronograph Sorcerer are both going to 3. So, we'll start with the easiest thing to discuss. Yeah, duh. Light Stage and Chronograph Sorcerer? Why were these cards ever semi-limited? In Master Duel in particular, these cards have never been problematic in the history of the game. They absolutely can be at 3 100%. Alright, that's the easy and the short part. Let's talk about everything else now. Holy. Alright. How do I feel about Prosperity going from 1 to 0? I love it, honestly. I am not a big fan of Prosperity as a card. Now you might be wondering, like, really? Because it doesn't seem like that bad of an effect. Like, I've even seen people that say, oh, Prosper could be at 3 and it would help my insert rogue deck that needs more consistency. But that's kind of one of the big issues with Prosperity, is that it gives a lot of decks that kind of artificial consistency. It was a lot more prominent when Prosper was at 3. It was a lot more prominent when Prosper was at 3. There were a lot of decks that had no business being as consistent as they were. It's one of the reasons why Stun was so good. Now, of course, Stun also had, back when Pross was at 3, they had a lot more floodgates in general, which is probably a more major contributing factor of why Stun was so good. But you know how they always just seem to have the second floodgate or the Solemn Judgment as well? A lot of that was due to Prosperity, and Extrav, of course, too. But, of course, the other thing about Prosperity is that it's a lot more flexible, both in terms, compared to Extrav, right? In terms of both what you banish and what you get out of it, because picking what to banish out of the extra is definitely better than banishing a random 3 or 6, right? But you could also argue that in a lot of situations, excavating, or not excavating, but looking at and adding one of the top 6 cards of your deck, that is excavating, isn't it? That's better than just straight up drawing too, a lot of the time, because there's a lot of the time where you don't want more cards, you want a specific card, and the only reason you would want more cards is to find that specific card more of the time. But getting to look at 6 as opposed to drawing 2, of course, helps you find specific stuff a lot more of the time. There's also the fact that Prosperity, I mean, here's the thing, I don't think that decks that don't care about the extra deck are inherently problematic, but there are a lot of decks that don't care about the extra deck, like Stun, that make for unfun gameplay loops, which they, you know, extra benefit off of Prosperity because they don't care about their extra deck, right? But also, I mean, there are non-quote-unquote toxic, what do you think a toxic Yu-Gi-Oh deck is, strategies that don't rely on the extra, like the Shining Sarcophagus deck that we've seen recently, right? So, but at the same time, that still puts an unfair, having Prosperity be around, especially again if it were at 3, kind of gives an unfair advantage to decks like that. I think Prosperity from 1 to 0 is a fantastic change. I love it. I am all on board for it. I'm not a fan of Prosper as a card. I didn't think it was so problematic that I felt the need to, like, vocalize that necessarily, but I'm not sorry to see this card go at all. Alright, card speed limited Dimension Shifter. Yeah, I think that's fine. It's interesting that they're hitting Shifter hardest in Master Duel, where, one, we don't have synergies that benefit from it like Malice, or just that whole kind of turn skip meta. And two, this is kind of this game where you would have, from a financial standpoint of Konami being greedy, the least incentive to hit D-Shifter because it's a UR here. It's like, you know, you're spending the premium currency in this particular game to be able to get this card. So what do you know? Every now and then they are looking out for us. It's one of the few times I can fully acknowledge that with a hit, but D-Shifter to 1, yeah, I'm a fan. I listen, I know there are a lot of people who are very, very vocally against Dimension Shifter. They say that it's like single-handedly ruining the game. I don't necessarily ascribe to that. I'm not saying, here's the thing, and I'm going to try to say this more often, using the word ascribe instead of agree or disagree when it comes to things like this, because whether or not I agree or disagree that D-Shifter is ruining the format is kind of a moot point, right? It's more about whether I think that as well. And I know you might be thinking, well, isn't that the same as agreeing or disagreeing? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. So I don't ascribe to the fact that D-Shifter is ruining the meta. I don't feel that for me and from my personal vantage point, my Yu-Gi-Oh! Meta experience is ruined by the existence of D-Shifter. But that said, I don't mind seeing it go to 1. I do think there is potentially a world that we don't live in where a card like D-Shifter might be fine. See, here's the thing, right? I think that D-Shifter is a problem less because of how it is designed and more of how Yu-Gi-Oh! As a whole is designed. I think that if not every single Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck was Graveyard Spam Turbo, then we could live in a world where D-Shifter is actually an interesting card. I thought that Malice was a great step in the direction of decks actually caring about their stuff going somewhere other than the graveyard. And if we lived in a world where it was like decks were 50-50, either graveyard-based or banish-based, more like Malice, then D-Shifter would be a relegated sideboard card. It would be a liability to main deck it, you know? Because you could very easily end up in a matchup where you support your opponent's strategy with it. That said, we don't live in that world. We absolutely do not live in that world. And in the world that we live in, I think D-Shifter going to 1 is a good thing. Fairy Tale Snow going from 3 to 1, that's also a great thing. This is a card that a lot of people have said needs to get banned. I've never thought that Snow needed to get banned, just limited. Just limited. All of the super problematic interactions with Snow that make people want it to get banned would definitely be solved by it going to 1. Because pretty much all of them involve looping 2 Fairy Tale Snows. The Necroface shenanigans. Just a lot of the combos in general with the big 60-card mill pile decks. Yeah, a lot of the issues that Fairy Tale Snow caused in those decks was by being at more than 1. So again, I think 1 Snow is perfectly fine. And I mean, let's be real. Like, these kinds of decks have really not been like super duper problematic for the vast majority of us. I understand that they were a bit of an issue in the last Duelist Cup, but again, I think limiting Fairy Tale Snow was enough to curb that. I think that's fine. Yeah, especially because, like, yeah, Snow, I think, has legitimate use outside of... See, this is another thing. I think a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Players just don't see the forest for the trees. You know, they see this card not even being the centerpiece of necessarily, but just being involved in what a lot of people consider to be a problematic strategy, like the Arrow Shark FTK pile deck or whatever, and so they're like, ban it. We saw this exactly with Isolde and Exodia. People were like, ban Isolde, it just enables Exodia. Just completely ignoring the fact that Isolde enables Infernoble Knight, as well as a bunch of very cool and not at all problematic warrior pile decks. Fairy Tale Snow, I think, is an important part of a lot of non-problematic 60-card pile mill decks and stuff like Tier Lament. Again, problematic is from my own perspective. You might think that the mere existence of a 60-card pile deck is an affront to God. I would implore you to build any deck that plays more than one archetype and just give it a try, but, you know, those are each of our own prerogatives. But Yeah, I don't think that Fairy Tale Snow had to be banned. I think limiting was the right call. I think they absolutely made the right call here. I'll go on the record and say that Fairy Tale Snow is no longer an issue. You will not see it be problematic in the same way you did before. I will absolutely go on the record as saying that. Psych-frame Gear Gamma to 1. Yeah, yeah, I think I'm in favor of this. There was a while where I kind of didn't want Gamma to go to 1. Well, it was when the OCG limited it, because the TCG limited it, and I don't really pay too close attention to TCG ban lists, because that's its own whole completely fucked world. Again, I saw some comments vocalizing support for this, but if you want me to talk about why I think the TCG ban list is fucked kind of beyond saving at this point, honestly, I would be glad to make that video. Just let me know in the comments below. I just don't know how many people actually want to see it. So, but when the OCG limited Gamma, then I was like, okay. There might be some validity to this. And my first initial reaction was to be like, no, I don't want Gamma to get limited. I think Gamma is a cool and good and important tool for the decks that can utilize it. And I think at the time, in Master Duel, that might have been true. But we're now at a point where, like, so many decks can use Gamma, because so many decks are able to start their combos not even committing to the board, that it's like... I don't know. Well, is it even about that, or is it more about the fact that, like... because you can start your plays by not committing to the board, Gamma is so useful against opponents' hand traps. It's a little bit of both, honestly. I mean, let's be real. It really boils down to, and this is really basic when you say it like this, the more that Gamma sees play, the more of a problem it becomes. Because it's a very powerful effect, right? It negates and destroys. It's not once per turn, so ashing it back into the hand doesn't even necessarily stop it. And on top of that, it summons the driver. And if you do that during your turn, you have multiple monsters to use as materials. It's an insanely good card. I think limiting was absolutely the right call for it. Absolutely the right call. I think it should probably just be at 1. I agree with that. Yeah. So cards to be semi-limited, Lightning Storm. We've seen this, I think, in both the TCG and OCG as well. And, I imagine that's largely because of Tenpai. You might argue, okay, so in best of 3 play, there is absolutely an argument that Lightning Storm is just a good sideboard card in general as well, right? Not many decks actually cite it, but in theory, the idea is that if you know you're going second, you could bring in Lightning Storms. But so I think in TCG, OCG, best of 3 paper play, I could understand Lightning Storm being hit outside of exactly Tenpai. In Master Duel, I think it's exactly Tenpai. I think honestly, these are a lot of these are Tenpai hits. Prosp to 0 is a Tenpai hit. I think a fair number of Tenpai builds were on Prosp. I could be wrong about that, but I think that was the case. D-Shifter to 1 is arguably a Tenpai hit, but also, I mean, I said it myself in my latest Tenpai video, and I've seen this across other people playing the deck too. D-Shifter is actually just not optimal in Tenpai, at least in Master Duel, so. And Gamma going to 1, I mean, that's more of a general hit, but that is also definitely a Tenpai hit as well. But, like, only in the sense that, like, Tenpai was one of very, very many decks that played Gamma in this meta. But Lightning Storm to 2, I'm not opposed to that. I don't really have any strong feelings about it. I think that's fine. I think that's completely fine. And yeah, we already talked about Light Stage and Chronograph Sorcerer. So, how do we feel about the list overall? And I'm not just asking myself, I'm also asking you. Definitely let me know how you feel about this ban list in the comments below. I think this is good. I think this is a good list. Now, of course, and everyone's always very quick to bring this up, that there are other things that the ban list could have addressed, and there certainly are. I don't disagree with that. But in terms of like let's set that aside for a moment, and let's just ask ourselves of what they did hit on this ban list. Were these good calls? Was this, in that regard, a good ban list? And I think the answer is yes. I think that all these hits were pretty on point. I don't think that any of them were unwarranted. I don't think that any of them feel particularly greed motivated. And I think they do address at least some of the issues that the meta has. So yeah, I think this was a solid list overall. But again, let me know what you think in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. That's going to do it for this one, though. This is Hexlex. I am going to be signing out. But before I do, let's move on to our outro. Hey everybody, Hexlex here. Just want to give you a huge thanks for watching all the way to the very end of the video. Believe it or not, that is actually one of the best ways that you can support the channel, is by watching the videos in their entirety. But there are many ways in which you can support the channel if you are so interested. The names that you're seeing on screen here, I gotta give an extra special thanks to, because these are people who have chosen to either become a member on YouTube, which if you're interested you can do as well via the join button next to the subscribe button down there, or have signed up over on Patreon and become members there. Link to that is going to be in the description below. Without the support that is being offered by, again, all the people that you're seeing on screen right here, I would not be able to take the time to dedicate to uploading daily YouTube videos. So thank you so very much. But there are also other ways you can support as well. Again, link to the description below. If you like my deck tracker that you'll see in a lot of my videos, the Untapped Companion, you can download that for free, and if you use my affiliate link down there, then that also goes a long way towards supporting the channel. That's again free. So is subscribing here on YouTube. That's also free and a huge way to support. You can also check out Twitch, once again linked in the description below. Following and subscribing over there will not only support as well, but also give you notifications of when I go live if you want to catch some of the live streams. But really, no matter how you choose to support, it all adds up and it all definitely means the world. So thank you, each and every one of you. For now, this is Hexlex. I'm going to be signing out. But more than that, I'm hoping that you have a fantastic day.